Alright, so hi guys, my name is Zander, and I was going to ask you guys about who here uses cell phones, but I think in the previous speeches, we all know the answer. So my topic is going to be early access to the internet, and how early access to the internet actually harms the health and life of people. The claims I will be making are that cell phone usage at an early age exposes kids to cyberbullying, dangers of social media by meeting strangers, aka pedophiles, and 3, early exposure to pornography. So the first one, cell phone usage at an early age exposes kids to cyberbullying, pretty much the basis of the internet. And if you guys don't know, cyberbullying is pretty much a type of bullying, but through electronically, through assaults physically, mentally, emotionally. And the ages that are affected by cyberbullying are between the ages of 3 and 15, which is pretty much where kids are in process of going through high school, trying to find their identity. And because of cyberbullying, it leads to suicide. And suicide right now is actually a big problem within teenagers. And suicide increased the percentages of deaths within teenagers. And it's been a 5% increasing since 2013, and it's now a 30% suicide attempt of kids through cyberbullying. It's also led to 10% of the kids who are cyberbullied attempt actually suicide, and 7% of them just do harm to themselves. This is made by the studies of Dr. Tracy Bennett, who studied clinical psychology at the California State University at Channel Islands. Which leads to my second point of the internet, leading to social media and them meeting pedophiles, strangers. And if you guys mostly don't know, social media is, well, we all use it. And the leading social media is Facebook. And according to studies, that 96% of kids between 8 to 16 use social media, and obviously through ages, through years, it keeps increasing. And with this, strangers can get access to personal information of little kids, personal info, pictures, and all that. So according to puresite.com, 95% of all Americans between 12 and 17 years old are online, and 3 in 14s access the internet on cell phones, tablets, and other electronic devices as of 2012. 1 in 5 US teenagers who regularly log onto the internet say they have received unwanted sexual solicitation via the internet. And then another one, or 2 more information from Guardchild, is that 20% of teenage internet users have been the target of unwanted sexual solicitation. And then another one from Guardchild is that 77% of the victims of online predators were aged 14 or older. So with that, the access to the internet has exponentially increased the percentage of pedophiles interaction with people. The more people stay on the internet, the more they have a better chance of interacting with people they don't want to. People have access to the stuff that they want to keep hidden. And right now it's become cybersecurity is that it's not being able to access personal information. And right now even strangers have access to all that. And leading from the internet and strangers, it leads to pornography. So boys in particular will become very hormonal at an early age and start looking at girls very differently, which are between the ages of 11 to 15, which is pretty much puberty. This is made by the studies of Dr. Scott Spies, who has an MD and is a pediatrician at Matthews Children's Clinic and has been a pediatrician for 15 years. He studied that boys will spend most of their time looking at girls, well, within high school, they'll spend most of their time looking at girls in a sexual way rather than, I don't know, the polite way. And about 63% of the boys are on pornographic sites, while 13.6% of women are on pornographic sites as well. So if you can tell that the percentage of boys have much higher rating than the girls, and that is because their hormones are starting to flare up. But anyway, with all that being said, it's all from social media, cyberbullying, meeting strangers, and their early access to pornography. It shows that early access to the internet actually harms the life of people.
Okay, well, the proposition's identified. It's a little bit broad at the beginning. It narrowed it down more to children in the latter part of the speech, so it might as well be in the propositional claim. The contents of the speech are previewed reasonably well. I do think we get some idea from the very beginning that you're talking about youthful access on this, even though you've said early access. You don't really define what that is. Anything under 18, anything under 10. I mean, at one point you had a range on social media from 3 to 15, and I'm going, what 3-year-olds are accessing cell phones or social media? But maybe they are. I don't know. It's just one of those things that I think you could develop a little bit more. So there's some background information. That's okay. The cyberbullying issue, that's where you actually get to that particular statistic, and I didn't really get a source for that statistic. Then I did get a whole bunch of percentages that are kind of piled on top of one another that need a little bit more explanation. Stringing together the numbers doesn't necessarily make it easy to figure out exactly how big an impact it's having, and definitely trying to distinguish the level of suicide or attempts at suicide that have changed as a result of people having access to the media. That's really what you need to be able to establish, and I think you've got some numbers here that help you do it, but you get a little bit lost in the numbers. You need to kind of explain what some of these numbers mean as you're presenting them. So as a presentation, it's a little problematic. I think the data is probably good, but the explanation of how they fit together and build the argument is less clear than it should be. The issue about pedophiles, I think that you have some general information about how widespread access is to the internet on these devices, so on and so forth. Then you've got 2 pieces of evidence that say basically the same thing, that 1 in 5 have received unwanted sexual advances, and then another one says 22%, which is basically 1 in 5 have received unwanted sexual advances. So we've got some number on that. I did think that it was easier to follow up with the statistic that you had next, which said 77% of those were under the age of 14, which certainly seems to suggest the pedophile link that you're talking about. One of the things that we don't have any data on from your speech is whether or not any of this has been fulfilled. Can we see that this is, the access is easier? Is it encouraged pedophiles? Are there more pedophiles? Are there more cases of abuse than there were prior to kids having access to this? I don't know what's defined as an unwanted sexual advance, and the context about whether or not somebody knows that they're talking to a kid. The world's full of weirdos who are looking for stuff online. So I don't doubt that the advances are true. The question is whether or not there's been a little bit more follow through on it, and I think you need to have some data on that. The third point, access to pornography, well, you've got some information about which groups, boys or girls, access the pornographic sites the most, and then there's some general information about kids and puberty, and that's about as far as it goes. I do have one piece of information. It sounds like it's a quote that the boys are spending a lot of their time looking at girls in a sexual manner, and that apparently this is different than it was before, but I didn't really get that that was comparative information. My guess is that boys are looking at girls in a sexual manner at a pretty high level at that age. Because of the hormones that are going on, the notion that it is linked to access to pornography, I think, is a little bit hard to get from the evidence that you've presented here. You do a pretty nice job speaking to the audience. Your eye contact is solid, and I think you know what it is you're talking about. But like I said, on that first point, I think you need to have a clearer explanation of what the links are, and the second and third points seem to be missing some examples and some other statistical information. All right, thank you.